Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to a special review for the brand new Def Leppard album, Drastic Symphonies. I know we weren't expecting one this soon after Diamond Star Halos just a year later. This one here just coming out on May 19th, 2023, and it's recorded with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and we're going to dive into that in just a bit here. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on really cool videos just like this with a review for the brand new Def Leppard album, Drastic Symphonies. All right, so I want to jump back just a bit for some historical context here. Since the band formed in 1977, with the exception of their first three albums, beginning in 1980 with On Through the Night, the band is known for taking a long time between albums. Twice in their career, they have had a 7-year-long gap. That's the longest gap between albums for them. Songs from the Sparkle Lounge came out in 2008, and then it was 7 years until the self-titled album in 2015, and unfortunately, another 7 years until Diamond Star Halos came out last year in 2022. But once in a while, the band moves a little bit quicker. One time that they did this, they did a hybrid album, retroactive in 1993. It had outtakes, B-sides on it, and then they did some re-recording, some enhancements and things like that to complete the songs, and as I said, released only a year later after Adrenalize that came out in 1992. So now, exactly 1 year after the fantastic Diamond Star Halo album has come out, the band's doing something similar here. Considering that we had to wait 7 years for that album, it's really cool that they're giving this album here to their fans in such short succession. So that brings us to the album we want to discuss, Drastic Symphonies. Like Retroactive, it is another hybrid album. It spans 40 years for them, featuring original recordings, but also newly recorded parts that enhance the songs. But for this project, they're bringing in the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. They've rearranged the songs, they're reimagined, there's embellishments to it, and it's from throughout their career. So it's not just focusing on one period or the other. In fact, it spans 10 different albums, 8 studio albums, 1 hits album, 1 live album, where they're pulling the tracks from that make this up. And they said that they didn't want to just focus on the greatest hits, have a greatest hits where they lay the orchestra over it. They wanted it to be much more than that. And I think it's really cool because they have turned this into a real album, in my opinion, by the way that it's been done. The CD itself has 15 tracks on it, but digitally there's 16 songs. The added track is Have You Ever Needed Someone So Bad off Adrenalize from 1992. So the 16 tracks clock in at 82 minutes, which is just a hair too much to fit on the standard CD. So perhaps it's on the double LP though, because they could easily do that that way. But I know it's on the digital one. Right away with this album here, what was evident to me on it is that this process, the orchestra, the rearrangements, all of that has really breathed some new life into these songs, especially the tired old hits. And I don't necessarily mean that a bad way. We all love the hits, especially songs like Pour Some Sugar on Me, which is track number 4 on here. But this time they've turned it into a somber piano ballad. I mean, I don't think anyone was expecting that. You have one of the biggest stadium anthemic rock songs is now a piano ballad. On top of that, it's got a female vocal duet on it. Joe Elliott re-recorded his vocals for this. In fact, the whole track is re-recorded because it is just that unique and different than anything else, whereas some of the other tracks that are on here use the underlying recordings and then embellish on top of that. Some of these completely re-recorded. So this isn't just a sort of stopgap album where they add the orchestra onto it. They've actually gone in, rethought this, rearranged, re-recorded stuff, to turn this into a special project. At least that is how I am seeing it. There's a lot more unexpected and interesting change-ups on this one as well. You've got other stadium rockers that become ballads, but then you've got ballads that become more lively and upbeat than they were on the original albums. One of them being track number 6, Love Bites, which is a great track off Hysteria. I think this one was just absolutely made for the orchestra. It's even better and more bombastic than the original now that it's done with the orchestra on here. Along with the new arrangements on here, there are new vocal parts, as I mentioned, but there's also new guitar parts on this. Some of the parts from songs have been removed in order to allow the orchestra to breathe and really shine on here. Orchestrally, the band, or the orchestra I should say, is really not a background element where you might expect it. This is up front, front and center on here, definitely holding their own. I look at the orchestra like a 6th member to the band, in terms of this album at least. And I did find some songs on here that actually shined better than they did on the original albums, where on the original albums I felt that they sort of stood out and or I should say were out of place on those albums. They actually fit much better in the context of this album. Case in point to songs like track number 7, Goodbye for Good This Time off of Diamond Star Halos, track number 8, Love, which came from songs from the Sparkle Lounge. Both of those tracks in the context of those albums didn't really work for me, but I'm actually really enjoying the way that they've done them on this album here. Other album highlights include track number 2, Paper Sun off Euphoria, which is probably my favorite song off of that album, one of my all-time favorite songs, in fact. Just done really, really well here. Just an absolute euphoric version, if you will, of that track. Track number 9, Gods of War from Hysteria, takes what was a dark song on that album and brings it up a bit on here. My only sort of complaint on it is I think they could have actually taken the sound effects and the spoken word bit that comes at the end and left that off to give it a sort of a real different feel than it. But the orchestra that's on it, and if any of you out there are Neil Diamond fans, the new orchestra aspect of this really gives that song a sort of feel like the song America from Neil Diamond. If you know that song, you'll know what I'm talking about when you hear it, but I think it's very cool. And then track number 11, Bringing on the Heartbreak off of High and Dry, which was already a very haunting song before, made even more so now. And I think that they've really kind of given it a very sorrowful component, which I find very cool for that track. And again, it's just one of those songs that we've always heard so much on the radio, MTV when it was around and that sort of stuff. And I like how they're changing some of these songs up, breathing that new life into them. Track number 12, Switch 625 from High and Dry. This one is another one that was just absolutely made for the orchestra. I love the added vocal component that is on this one here. And don't worry, it is still a full-on bombastic rocker of a tune. Track number 13, Too Late for Love off Pyromania, is here. This one is now a real sweeping orchestral high point on the album, taking all of that bombast and just elevating it to a very almost classy level, if you will. But it keeps all that character of the song and elevates it to an even higher degree. Now, my only real complaint on the album as a whole is that I would have liked to have heard something from the debut album, On Through the Night from 1980, and or even something from their very early first EP. I think that could have been a nice standout moment for the album. One big omission on here is that they left the song Photograph off of Pyromania. That's not here. And another track that necessarily didn't need to be here, but I actually would have really enjoyed hearing the reinterpretation of, would be Rocket off of Hysteria. I think that drum and bass part of it could have been done really cool here with instrumentation from the orchestra. But all in all, I have to say, I am very happy with the song selection that makes up this album. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. First of all, I'm very glad that's in a jewel case. Kudos to Def Leppard for now doing another jewel case album in the day and age where so many things are in digipacks and whatnot. Here's the spine of it. I don't like when they don't do the actual logo where it's written like that on the spine. In fact, not only is it very small and hard to read, it's upside down. So I kind of don't like that. If it's vertical on your wall, it really doesn't matter, but when it stacks like this, it's going to be upside down. That's minor though. Here's the back side of it. We've got the song listing in groupings of 4, except the last bit here where, because this is a 15-track album, it's only 3. I kind of assume that has to do with the 4 sides of the LP, that kind of a thing. But I do wish they had put track numbers next to it. It's always a little harder when you have to count through the tracks to know where you're going. All right, when we open this up here, here's the booklet on the back side. We get a photo of the band there, which is very cool. We've got the disc there, and if I pop that out, nothing really on the underside for you, but just wanted to show you there. And here's the booklet. Let you see that cover a little bit better there without all the shine from the jewel case. Another photo of the band on the inside. I thought it was kind of interesting. There's photos throughout of this that have these mannequins playing the orchestra. We get information about the songs and album and whatnot, but they tell you what album the tracks are from, who's playing on it, so you get to know whether there's been, you know, an added vocal duet or whatever and so forth. Some more cool, interesting shots like that. And then we get some interesting, you know, reminiscences and thoughts and things from the people that scored the album, you know, producer, that sort of thing. So 3 different write-ups like that in here that you get to read. A little bit more information on the album and whatnot, and that brings this to a close. But the bottom line on the album itself, you know, despite the album focusing on a lot of ballads, there are still a lot of peaks and valleys on this album. I sort of thought this was going to be a very somber affair, but I find that it's actually a lot more lively than that. And those peaks and valleys, you know, it's not always where you would expect them to be. Case in point with the song Pour Some Sugar on Me. I actually thought that was going to be a big, bombastic, over-the-top style song. Turned out to be a somber piano ballad. But it makes the listening on here a lot of fun. And as I had mentioned earlier, it sort of breathes new life into these songs, making me want to hear them again. Takes a lot to do that, because for diehard fans like us that really know these songs inside and out, to be able to breathe that much new life into it, to make it sound fresh and new, I think is a big deal. And I think they've done that nicely here on this album, Drastic Symphonies. So, you know, I say do yourself a favor, check out this album from one of the biggest 80s rock bands around, you know, now with a orchestra added in tow by the Royal Philharmonic. I think it actually does something really special here and is definitely worth your time exploring. All right, so there you go. That is my review of Def Leppard's brand new studio album, Drastic Symphonies. As a related video, if you're interested, I did do a full review of their album, Diamond Star Halos. I'll leave a link in the description and you can check that out if you're interested. All right, everyone, take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.